As a reminder, in the previous part, I provided evidence which showed how, throughout the course of history, Marduk was known as Ra, the god of Egypt, Ashur, the god of ancient Assyria, Ahura Mazda, the god of Persia, Zeus, the god of ancient Greece, Jupiter, the god of ancient Rome, Allah, the god of Islam, which he is known by today. According to the books of Zecharia Sitchin, he talked about how he discovered archaeological evidence which led him to believe that Marduk had visited Egypt, where he spent time helping to set up and advance the Egyptian civilization. While there, he changed his name to Ra, the chief god of Egypt. When depicted in ancient Egyptian art, he always wore an Anunnaki eagle flight helmet covering his face. The purpose for this possibly being that he felt he had to hide his true identity from outsiders, for the purpose of maintaining his safety. Zecharia Sitchin found ancient artifacts and textual evidence which led him to believe that Marduk was known by the ancient Assyrians as the god Ashur, whereas the ancient Greeks knew him as the god Zeus. Marduk was known by the Romans as the god Jupiter. And if we compare the ancient Greek statue of Zeus next to the ancient Roman statue of Jupiter, we can actually see that both of them have the same identical face, with the same extra curly hair. It is very clear that both of these statues are of the same person, i.e. Marduk. Today, historians are in mutual agreement that Zeus and Jupiter are the same god. Here we can see an image of Zeus, which was found painted on the side of ancient Greek pottery. This hand-painted masterpiece dates back to the 5th century BC. It depicts Zeus, i.e. Marduk, with long curly black hair. Therefore, it would be perfectly logical to assume that Marduk himself actually has long curly black hair. So after piecing together all the evidence, it is now possible for us to see the actual face of Marduk, who is Satan. And if we look closely, he has the appearance of a modern day male supermodel, with beautifully defined eyes, perfectly straight nose, flawless lips, and extra curly locks. Now, this begins to make sense, because in the Bible, where it describes Satan, it actually mentions how beautiful he was. Here are those verses. Ezekiel chapter 28, verses 13 to 17. You were in the Garden of Eden. You were the anointed cherub, but your heart became filled with pride because of your beauty. According to this ancient Sumerian or Babylonian depiction of Marduk, it shows him holding his famous lightning weapons while poised in the combat stance. We can clearly see how this scene is reminiscent of this ancient Greek depiction I showed earlier of Marduk as Zeus, where he is again clutching his famous lightning weapon while poised in a combat stance. Here is an ancient non-functional replica of the actual lightning weapon that Marduk used. It is called a Vajra, and this particular artifact was discovered on the grounds of an ancient religious complex in the Kathmandu Valley of Nepal. In this photo, we can see two non-functional Vajra replicas. The Vajra at the top is set for an open active configuration, ready for battle. The Vajra underneath is in a closed inactive standby configuration where it is not in use. Now, taking into consideration the earlier images showing Marduk brandishing these weapons, it is very clear that the original Vajra weapons used by Marduk were functioning mechanical devices which fired powerful, fatal electrical charges from each end. In this image, we can see Marduk as Ashur, the god of ancient Assyria, sitting inside his flying winged disc, which is hovering in midair. In this image, we can see Marduk again, but this time as Ahura Mazda, the god of Persia. He is still in his flying winged disc, but now it appears to have extended feet on either side. This gives the impression that it may have landed, with Marduk standing up and attempting to exit the vehicle. As I had already mentioned earlier, Zecharia Sitchin actually claimed on multiple occasions that after much exhaustive research, he came to the conclusion that the God of Islam, known as Allah, is actually Marduk. Sitchin basically explained that Allah has the same religious system as Marduk, with the same subjugation of women, the same dietary laws, etc., etc. And as a recap, earlier in part 4, I described a 7-headed beast from the sea, which is mentioned in Bible Revelation, with the names of blasphemous false gods upon its foreheads. Basically, this sea beast represents Satan. The blasphemous names shown again here all have one thing in common. They are the false gods of world-ruling empires throughout the course of history. Basically, the ones highlighted here with arrows are Marduk, Satan's various name aliases that mankind has known him by at different stages throughout the course of history. It is important to note that Marduk was known to the Babylonian Empire by his original name and was worshipped by them as their god. Marduk, Satan's latest and final name alias, which he is deceptively known by today, is Allah. In my other videos, I present evidence showing how Islam will eventually take over the entire world for a short time. Okay, now this all begins to make sense. In the Bible, Satan falsely claims to be God Almighty. This is confirmed in the following Bible verses. Isaiah chapter 14, verses 12 to 13. Just look how you fell from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. For you have said in your heart, I will ascend higher than the stars of God in heaven, where I will set my throne. Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. And the great dragon was thrown out of heaven, that ancient serpent who is also known as the devil and Satan. He has deceived the whole world. Okay, so according to that last verse, it clearly states that Satan has deceived all the people of the world. Here it is again. Revelation chapter 12, verse 9. Satan has deceived the whole world. It is definitely true that all Muslims today have been deceived by Allah into believing that He is Almighty God when He isn't. In fact, all Christians at one time or another have been fooled into believing that Allah is God when He isn't. Thankfully, many of these Christians have gradually accepted the truth that Allah is Satan. Religious scholars are in mutual agreement that the next Bible verse, which I am about to show you, is based on a last days end time scenario, when Satan will actually be worshipped by the misguided people of the world. Revelation chapter 13 verse 4. And they worshipped the dragon, who gave power to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Bear in mind that I've already identified the dragon as Marduk. He is also known as Allah. Now, according to multiple verses found in the Muslim Quran, it reveals the following interesting details about Allah. Quran Surah 3, Ayah 54. Allah is the greatest of Makkah. Quran Surah 8, Ayah 30. Allah is the greatest of Makkah. The basic meaning of the Arabic word Makkah is deception. Okay, so here are those verses again, but this time using the correct English. Quran Surah 3, Ayah 54. Allah is the greatest of deceivers. Quran Surah 8, Ayah 30. Allah is the greatest of deceivers. Here are some more relevant Islamic verses. Quran Surah 7, Ayah 99. Then did they feel safe from the deception of Allah, but nobody feels safe from the deception of Allah except those who will perish. Quran Surah 8, Ayah 30. And remember, O Muhammad, the unbelievers plotted deception against you to imprison you, or kill you, or evict you, but they deceive, and Allah deceives. And Allah is the greatest of deceivers. Okay, so after reading those Quran verses, it is very clear that Allah is extremely deceptive. In fact, the Quran doesn't just explain that Allah is a deceiver, it states that he is the greatest deceiver that there is or ever was. Basically, nobody does deception better than him. But what does the Bible tell us about Allah? According to the Bible, it identifies Satan as the greatest of deceivers. This is confirmed in John chapter 8 verse 44. As Jesus spoke to the group of Jews, he said, "You belong to your father, the devil. There is no truth in him. When he speaks his lies, he speaks from the heart. The devil is the father of lies. Okay, so after reading this Bible verse, it is abundantly clear that Allah is Satan. But bear in mind that I have already revealed his original underlying identity as Marduk.